Everybody. Today we are going to create Masterboard magic. We're going to build layers and I'm going to answer the question, why make a Masterboard? Hi, I'm Karen Burchill, Creative Katie. Welcome to my channel. So here is the inspiration, a rose from my garden. I wish you could smell it. It is absolutely divine. But as I was gardening, I realized that I had this tissue paper on my desk. So I decided that I'm going to use it. Didn't really have a page in mind, so I decided that I am going to make a masterboard. I'm working on an 11 by 17 copy paper. It's lightweight, and I'm just ripping up that tissue paper. So why do we make a masterboard? Well, I find the process of making a masterboard a great way of getting unstuck. It's a creative process. You're not focused on the end page. So it's very freeing and there's less pressure. You can also use up little bits of things that you have on your desk, which is what I'm using here. So I have the tissue paper sitting there. These are some pieces of note paper actually that had put through the um, with embossing folders, and there's texture on there. And I'm kind of experimenting to see if the texture holds up. Now I'm also grabbing little bits of music paper that I have sitting around. So we can use a lot of stuff, use up the stash, while at the same time, a masterboard will build our stash. Because what you're going to use, because you're doing this typically on a larger piece of paper, you will have enough for multiple makes. You can cut this up, you can use it as an Insta background, you can use it as collage papers to jumpstart a creative page. It can be cut to any size. It can be cut into multiple ATCs, iCads, different size journal pages. So now that I've ripped the various bits that I've grabbed, and I grabbed that music paper because I thought it really went well with the colors that were in that rose tissue paper. And I put some of it underneath the tissue paper thinking that it would shine through. I think that would work better if I had just stamped something underneath that. It gets very dark and muddy because of the color of this vintage music paper that I got from the shop. So I am just using my fluid matte medium here, putting a coat under and then on top. My goal here is just to really adhere this down well. When you're making a masterboard, you're not focused on the end page, the focal image. And in fact, I want ideas as we get this to the end of what you think I should do with the masterboard. And that will be in another video. It would have just gotten too long for this one. I'm just putting it down and I've got, I'm layering it up. That's also going to add some texture to the page. When you're making a masterboard, you want to make interesting layers. The goal is not to have every part of this be the same because you're going to cut it up. And however it turns out, you might have some parts that are really great and other parts that aren't so great. And you can choose to cut it up accordingly. So the page got fairly wet and it's buckling because of course I was just using 11 by 17 regular copy paper. So once it's partially dry, I'm cutting off the excess and then checking to make sure that all the ends are glued down. You really want to make sure that this is all perfectly adhered down. If you have gel medium, you can use gel medium. People have asked about Mod Podge. I prefer the matte medium. I use Liquitex brand, either Basics or the professional brand, and get it. I buy bulk and I get it at a good price. I don't like Mod Podges. It tends to get a little plasticky, but again, use what you have. So now I want to blend the edges and knock back some of this, and I'm just taking some of my white gesso and spreading it with my finger. You can use a brush, but I prefer using a finger. I find I get a nicer blend. And while this is sped up somewhat, I am working pretty quickly because I want to add some color here. And I want the gesso to still be a little bit wet. I'm putting the gesso on because it's going to help me blend the colors on the page easier, and it'll also allow me to do the technique of removing paint through the stencil. I'm going to break this up with a little bit of gesso in here. Remember, we're building layers. So I decided to keep going with the use what's in your stash. And I have these DecoArt Americana paints that have been sitting there, and I need to use them. Now they are far more liquidy than the Liquitex Basics that I typically use. And I grabbed Bright Salmon, Tuscan Red, and Tiger Lily, which is a Martha Stewart paint, and that's got some shimmer to it. I'm going to use my Liquitex Basics, Naples Yellow, and White Gesso and just blend on the page. And again, I'm just doing this with my fingers. Now I'm grabbing a stencil here because I think, oh, I'm going to remove the paint through the stencil. And I just grabbed whatever stencil was right there and I pull it off. And I like how it's working. I just didn't like that stencil. So I take a minute and go through my stencil stash and pick some other stencils out. And I'm just going to reapply the paint here a little bit and do that process over. This one is Kaleidoscope. It's one of my favorite stencils. I've got it in the 12-inch and the 6-inch, and I'm using the 12-inch today because I like the scale of it. This one is Ripples, and I like it. I just chose not to use it anymore. This one is called Quadrifoil, another all-time favorite. So I'm putting on paints and then removing paint through the stencil to get pattern on that. So that's another layer. So we have the collage papers layer, then we have the gesso layer, now we have the paint layer where I'm also removing paint through the stencil. So I'm adding pattern. And I am just having fun mixing those colors, making pattern on the page. And that's one of the great benefits of you doing a masterboard. And I might come up with a background that I absolutely love that I could now duplicate on an actual page if I didn't want to use this page as Insta background. I'm just turning it, adding more paint. I'm trying not to cover every little last bit of those collage papers. And I'm not sure if you'll see it at the end, but you do see that tissue paper shining through. You do see that music paper coming through at the end. Everything that I've done will lead to the wonderful layered page masterboard at the end. I'm not overly worried about balancing it out and making sure I've got 3s or 5s or odd numbers of elements on the page because this isn't going to be a finished page. And as far as I take this masterboard, when I decide to use whatever parts of it I use and however I use it, I can add to it. I can delete things with gesso. I can add to it should I need to, depending what I'm going to end up creating with it. Now at the end, I have pictures that show several stages of this background. Now this was looking a little dark, so I grabbed this fan flower stencil. This is a cake and cookie stencil, but don't let the name fool you. They work perfectly well in the craft room, much to my husband's upset because he would prefer that I would use it on cakes and cookies. I was using white gesso, but it's too liquidy, so I'm using my Liquitex Basics white, titanium white, and that's a little more opaque and giving me the effect that I want. So I'm just placing the stencil back over it and just going for a little more opaque look. Now you're going to notice as I continue with this fan flower stencil that how this page lightens and brightens. Adding a layer of white or stenciling with white really can bump up a background, or in this case, a masterboard. And I keep going and I'm turning the page, getting different areas. I'm not worried about making a perfect stencil pattern. I am trying not to get paint squishing underneath the stencil. I don't like that look, but I'm not even trying to get a perfect circle. I just want layers of pattern. Everything I add on top pushes what's behind it. And when you look at the whole, you see every little last bit of everything that you've done. And everything contributes to that final. Now, one of the things I struggle with is making everything very symmetrical and even. I tend to overdo it. Now I've lightened it. I wanted to add some text and I wanted to add some black to this. So I grabbed this words stamp from Stamperia and I'm stamping that and I'm turning the stamp this way and that way. Again, I'm not worried about making a perfect stamp. This is just one element, one layer in the entirety. And I'm loving the look of this. It's pushing back some of that fan flower stencil and giving that contrast to the page. And it's tying in with the music notes. And you can see there some of the music peeking through. You want all these elements to work together. Now I grabbed this stencil. This is called Gentle Leaves. It's a slimline stencil from the Crafters Workshop. And I will list these down below, and you can find them at NinnysNapkins, TCW Shopify store, or Amazon. And I'm using the Tuscan Red here, and I'm moving this stencil around the page, and I'm really liking the floral motif. It kind of ties in with the roses that I started with on the tissue paper. Now you can still see some of those roses peeking through, some of the paper, some of the colors that were there. It added amazing texture and it started my color story. After doing that with the red, I grabbed the Naples yellow and I'm adding another layer. And I didn't even change my makeup sponge. I really add this yellow becomes very subtle, but I'm loving how it's looking. And I like using the same stencil with two colors. I find they really work, that works together really, really well. So I am really happy with how this has turned out. All these layers are incredible. And now I have the task ahead of me of going through my stash, going through pictures and napkins, and trying to figure out what I'm going to do with this masterboard. So if you have ideas, put them in the comment section below. Love to hear it. What color focal image do you think would go on this? I decided I wanted a little bit of small scale stuff, so I grabbed my, this is a shelf liner, and I'm putting on black paint, and I'm just adding that a little bit of black dots here and there. Remember, this is a masterboard. I'm not going to use this in its entirety. Subscribe to my channel if you want to see how I take this masterboard and what I turn it into. Here is the beginnings, the beginning layers. And as it evolves. Thank you so much for joining me on my creative journey. I hope I've inspired you. Now go get creative.